This is Flipping the Script podcast, the soon-to-be #1 leadership podcast for purpose-driven leaders and great guest experts who give us a unique insight into what leadership looks like behind the scenes. I'm Shalia Stafford, your host, and I'm committed to helping you lead your challenges using leadership strategies to gain new perspectives, fuel your growth, and transform the way you execute on your success. Welcome back, everyone. It's Shalia here. Can we lead high performance mindfully through the constant evolving pressures that life demands from us? Today, we're going to flip the script on what it means to lead high performance using foundational leadership strategies and tools used by some of the most high-performing executives leading the nation's top organizations, trailblazers forging new paths, and purpose-driven leaders seeking to create an impact in every critical part of their life. We're not talking about reviewing profit and loss statements or creating quarterly sales goals. We're talking about the foundational strategies that take a lifetime of commitment to test under pressure, refine, and evolve. And here's the thing, when you learn and apply the strategies that you're going to hear about today, they can be used in all areas of your life because we don't employ these strategies just for the title. It is integrated in our DNA and it seeps into our parenting, relationships, career, and more. Our guest expert today is a testament to the journey of being tested and is here to show us how to elevate our performance regardless of our primary role in life, whether we're a leader, a parent, or a professional. Dr. Jannell MacAulay is a human performance consultant, combat veteran, Air Force pilot, transformational TEDx speaker, mother, wife, and leading expert in mindful high performance. She's a 20-year U.S. Air Force veteran with experience leading and building teams, designing and implementing complex organizational change, and creating innovative solutions to optimize the human weapons system when operating in rugged and high-stress environments. Highly educated, critical thinker, strategist, and leadership professionalism educator, and partner, co-founder of Elite High Performance Warrior Mindset Training Experience for individuals and organizations. Dr. MacAulay commanded the 400-member Joint 305th Operations Support Squadron, DoD's only tri-service OSS with 10 flights, 2 airfields, and the largest KC-10 formal training unit. Most recently, she serves as a human performance consultant for the U.S. Air Force, Department of Justice, and corporate America. She is a graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy, has a master's degree in kinesiology from Penn State University, and a PhD with work in the field of strategic health and human performance. Dr. MacAulay is a certified wellness educator, yoga instructor, mindfulness researcher, and holds a certificate in plant-based nutrition. She is a proud military spouse, mother of 2, and combat veteran with over 3,000 flying hours as a pilot in the C-21, C-130, KC-10 aircraft. Dr. MacAulay, thank you for your service and for taking the time out of your day to invest in our purpose-driven leaders by sharing your experience and expertise with us. We cannot wait to dig into this some more.
Of course. Thank you so much for the support. And I really enjoy speaking with excellent and like-minded people like yourself. And so I think this conversation is going to go in a great direction. I'm really excited for it.
I'm excited. So you know what? To kick it off, as a tradition of the show, we like to ask our guests a few fire away questions to get to know you a little bit better. Shall we fire away?
Yeah, let's fire away. Let's do it.
Perfect. Okay. So what is something that you're curious about right now?
Ooh, I am curious about how I can get to be a better powder skier.
Interesting.
A window as snow is pouring down because I just moved to Utah recently and started skiing. I'd never skied before. I'd been a snowboarder off and on. And so, yeah, that's what I'm curious about now as I'm looking at the snow dump and excited about my ski day this week.
So what is something that you understand today about your life that you didn't understand just a year ago?
I would say the one thing that I continue to challenge myself with and grow in is the idea of recovery. Mm-hmm. And so I've always been one that was all about the hustle and go, go, go. You know, we have to work hard. That's a key ingredient to much of our success in life. But the one thing that I think just continues to evolve in my own relationship with stress and with growth is my ability to recover. and how
Mhm.
vitally important it is. So that's probably something that I'm continuing to work on.
Complete this thought. I wish I had paid more attention when.
My grandmother told me her stories.
Oh,
That's actually now as my grandmother is getting older and my mother is getting older, I love having my daughter hear their stories about how they grew up and how life is different and just, how it's been different for women throughout the course of time. And so I remember back to my great grandma and, my grandma who's passed away. And I wish I would have listened a little bit more to the stories and so I could have a deeper appreciation for their experience.
yeah, and even to record our own stories, huh?
Yes. And we're doing so much better today when we have things like podcasts and blogs and an opportunity to kind of write down those stories that would otherwise be hidden for most of our families and for other people to learn from. So I love that we have that opportunity today.
Yeah. Okay, so if you woke up tomorrow and you discovered that everything in life was now free, what's the first thing that you would do?
Everything in life is free.
Everything is free.
Oh my goodness. I love to travel. So I would grab my kids and my husband and we would travel to probably New Zealand. That's the place
Mm.
that we've never been, where I've never been. Being a pilot, I traveled the world many times, but I've never been to New Zealand. And I would grab my family and we would head there, I think.
Oh, that's awesome. There is this YouTube channel talking about recording our lives of this family that travels with their 3 children, and one is 6 months old. And it's just gorgeous, the experiences that they get to take in at such a young age to mold their life, how they view life.
Exactly. I recently retired from the military. My husband's about to retire. And our goal was originally we were going to take a whole year and take our 2 kids and travel the world. Now we're building a house. There's different things that, my daughter is
Yeah.
now almost a teenager and leaving for a year sounds very daunting to her. So we're going to kind of do these month trips. Um, over the course of the next year, which is really exciting for us. But I think that the world is a great environment and playground for our children to learn about life, learn about history, right? Instead of reading it in a textbook, being able to actually be there just changes the whole dynamic and the learning experience.
Absolutely. That's on our bucket list too. So I'll have to follow your travel journeys there.
Awesome.
So if you had to break up your life up until this point into 3 chapters and give each chapter a title, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. These are some hard questions you got for me today. Um, Let me see. So I think I would start with, it would be kind of development, growth, and then like I'm trying to figure out because I'm just starting this last chapter, I would say, and my future. Let me think about the third chapter. But the first 2 chapters, I think, would be, my childhood is how I kind of set that foundation for who I am. And I'm talking about it in a book I'm writing right now. One quote that my dad used to tell me ever since I can remember, he would say, "Vision is the art of seeing the invisible." And that whole idea really developed me as a young person in order to do things like fly airplanes as a woman, especially back when that wasn't a thing for me to like look up and see other women doing it when I was a kid. So how do you have the vision for things that are outside the norm? I'm sure we'll get into it. I teach the military how to meditate and use mindfulness. And that is a very unconventional tool for military operators. And there were people that were like, "You're crazy to think that something like that is going to be effective and work." And it was. And so I think my dad set that foundation in my development to always see what others could not. And then the second phase being the growth. I think that you've got to get out there. You've got to put yourself in some risk-taking environments in order to stress yourself a little bit to see what you can truly become and where your true potential lies. So I would say like the second chapter was all about growth for me as a mom, as a wife, as a pilot, as a leader. And now I think this third chapter is probably more about reflection and giving back.
Hmm.
You know, I would love to teach, especially, I mean, everybody, but especially young women out there, some of the things that I have learned and share my story to hopefully, whether it's inspire them to chart their own path or to just be authentic wherever it is that they are at. Um, that I think is what this third chapter is about.
That's beautiful. And I love the quote that your father gave you. Vision is the art of seeing the invisible. I have to say that I am fangirling with your journey here because you are, as a mother myself, as a working mother, you are an example of what is possible when sometimes it feels like impossible, just leading the day to day. And so with that being said, right, as a working parent, when I make it into bed, I feel like I just led a high risk mission that day. You, on the other hand, you served in the Air Force and you led teams on missions for years as a mother and a wife. How did this journey begin for you?
Well, I grew up in a family of public servants in Southern California. I had a lot of Marines in my family, and my dad was a police officer, and my mom was a nurse. And I think I always felt a calling to serve in some capacity, serve my community or my nation. And my uncle was a helicopter pilot. He used to take me to the air shows.
Mm.
And I think that was what lit the fire in my desire to someday, take on the challenge of doing something different. I think that my dad's, what he taught me and the things that he would say, when I was a little girl, he would tell people that we would just meet on the street, even, hey, my daughter's going to grow up to be a submarine warfare commander or a combat pilot. And those jobs weren't open to women in the 80s. I didn't know that though. I just kept hearing him say this to strangers, and I would see like the strangers' eyes light up and be so impressed, that this little girl who was a ballerina, mind you, when I was younger, and gymnast and baton twirler was going to grow up and do these amazing things. And so I think I always just knew that there weren't any limits on the capabilities of what my hard work and talent could get me toward. And so I think that's where it started. And then this second act of my journey really came out of self necessity, because I realized hard work alone can only get you so far. Life is very challenging, and it's challenging to find the joy amidst the chaos. And we all have high stress, and we all have some semblance of chaos in our lives, but it's how do you shape your mindset around that? I like to say we spend a lot of time trying to control the external environment, everything around us, right? As parents, we do this. As leaders, we do this. As a pilot, I would try to do that, try to control as much as I could. And what I think the real key to our success as individuals is controlling the internal environment, understanding where our thoughts, our feelings, and our emotions take us on a day-to-day basis. Having been in a high stress combat situation and having been in the carpool lane at my children's school, I will tell you the physiological response
Yeah.
to both of those environments can be very identical. And I think that's when I realized that I could help a lot of different people with the education and the skill sets that I provide, because they were helping me both in combat environments and at home with my kids when I was going to lose my marbles because it was taking, 10 minutes for my son to find his shoes before we had to leave in the morning to get to school, right? You've been there.
Yes. That is the toughest part. And just even the backup shoes are missing, the socks don't match, the milk spilled, and we were already late. So it can definitely feel very chaotic. To enter into the Air Force in high school at such a young age, I have to imagine that to have this breakthrough and going after your dreams, there had been quite a few opinions of you formed of maybe what you were capable of doing or not, even as a mother and an entrepreneur, as a woman. As you're going against the norm, how do you break through these opinions of you or these preconceived biases before people even know what you're capable of doing or have done?
Well, that's a very difficult thing, because it's part of the human condition for us to care what other people think. And some of my work, I have a company and a partnership with Pete Carroll of the Seattle Seahawks and Dr. Mike Gervais, who's a high performance sports psychologist. And we like to talk about it in terms of, and I think Mike coined this, fear of other people's opinions.
Mm.
Right? Instead of FOMO, right? You've heard of
Yes.
fear of missing out, right? There's also this fear of other people's opinions that I think many of us struggle from, and it keeps us small, right? It keeps us inside our comfort zone because we're not willing to take those risks to step outside to really challenge the status quo or see what we can truly become and where our dreams are, because they're on the other side of that risk taking. And it's really unfortunate if you let that mind block become effective in holding you back, in achieving those dreams. But many people do, right? It is very common. And so I think when I was younger, before I really did some mindset training in my, later years, but when I was younger, I think it was just sheer grit, determination, and this idea of, my dad's mantra of like, vision is the art of seeing the invisible. Just because other people are telling you they can't see it doesn't mean that you need to put blinders on the ability to see it for yourself. And so I did get a lot of my high school friends, male types mostly, would say things like, she can't go to the Air Force and fly airplanes. No way. Like, you'd never be able to make it there. And I think that actually gave me a little bit extra motivation to prove them wrong. And then once I'm in a situation, I've never been somebody that would give up. So even though there were moments that it was tough, like I had that grit and perseverance to push through, because I always saw that end goal vision. So a lot of times, if you can clearly articulate for yourself what that end result looks like, it really doesn't matter what naysayers, are saying to you along the way, because you can still see the vision you have for either yourself, your leadership, your organization, your family. And what I've learned in my later years is you can mute that out even more with the skill set of mindfulness. Because really what mindfulness is it brings an increased awareness to how you're interacting and with your environment, how you're connecting with your relationships, and it helps you determine what's valuable information for you and what's not.
Hmm. So how did your journey come about to even meet the path of mindfulness? Was it in the time that you were in the military?
Yes. So I was never introduced to it at a young age. It was actually came to me out of self necessity. I hit kind of a burnout point in my career where I was very successful. I was doing everything right. I was, getting all of the training I needed to do the job that I needed to do, and I was doing it well. I was deploying. I had a active duty military spouse who's amazing husband. I had a great one child at the time, and I was doing it all right. I was the working mom that was deploying and there for my family. And what I realized is that although I was super successful, there was no joy behind it. And I found myself in a space where I literally forgot how to laugh. And I lost sight of all the love that was around me. I felt completely alone. And I was so busy trying to be perfect in everything that I did. I lost sight of the fact that growth comes from our imperfections and our stumbles and our failures along the way. And I couldn't even enjoy, and I don't know if many of your listeners maybe have been here as well, even when I had all that success, I couldn't even enjoy it because I was always worried about what I was going to mess up next or what was coming next that I had to prepare for. That even when I had a moment to just take a breath and say, gosh, like take stock in your life right now. This is all amazing. I never did that because I was always going so fast to the next thing. And I realized that that was not my highest performing space as an individual, nor was it the most productive way for me to lead my life. And so out of self necessity, I needed a solution. And at the same time, the Air Force sent me back to school to get what eventually turned into my PhD. And I really wanted to study the concept of why life had to be so hard.
Did you really? Was that your focus?
Yes, I wanted to find a solution for how can we accelerate our professional success without having to sacrifice our health and relationships along the way. Like there had to be something I was missing. And so I didn't go looking for mindfulness. I actually went looking for how can I build myself into the most effective human weapon system. In the military, we spend millions of dollars on our platforms for, whether it's a tank or an airplane or a missile system or whatever it is. We spend all this money on this equipment and we call them weapon systems. But it was very difficult for us to understand the human body as a weapon system, right? The human being behind all of this stuff needs to be pretty darn amazing. And so I wanted to study how do you make that human being operate at their full potential, both in their workspace and their life space, because they're both vitally important.
They're interconnected.
Completely. Like if you're doing well in your life, your work is it's gonna show up in your work, right? So I wanted to study that concept, and in the course of that research, I found that you can train three things as human beings. You can train your body, you can train your craft, and you can train your mind. And while I had spent, 15 years at that point training my body, right? The military gets that. Most of us get that we have to be physically fit. I also trained my craft. I was very skilled as a pilot, my job, right? I spent like a year and a half just learning how to fly airplanes. But I never had anyone invest in the idea of formally training my mind to do my job. So I noticed there was a gap, and I started researching, well, how can you formally train your mind? How can you, what's the best way to do that? And if you do look at the cutting edge research, mindfulness, I think, is the foundational skill for a formalized pathway to developing that mental skills training that we all need to be our best, especially in high stress moments.
That's so interesting. Okay, so for those who are listening and they're high achievers, high performers, and they've heard the notion of mindfulness being thrown around there, and they're envisioning people on yoga mats and just, taking some time to count to 10 or do deep breaths, what do most people get wrong about mindfulness and what it really looks like?
So I think people just equate mindfulness as meditation. Meditation means you're sitting, cross-legged and humming Om with your eyes closed. And that is not what I'm teaching. And that's not exactly, some people find that to be very effective. As a very high stress individual, that was not going to work for me. Like I remember my first yoga class when I was a lieutenant in pilot training and just being like, I can't lay here. This is not doing it for me. Like I'm wasting, I felt like I was wasting my time. So the way that I like to teach mindfulness now is if you think of your mind like an iPod, and I took this from one of my colleagues, Dr. Amishi Jha, who works at the University of Miami and is very well versed in the world of mindfulness and research. And if you equate your mind to an iPod, we spend a lot of time in fast forward, thinking about our, building these catastrophes up in our mind, thinking about what could happen in the future, worrying, right, about what's going to happen the next day. In fact, I like to say the majority of the catastrophes we will experience in our lifetime will only happen inside our minds. Right? They will feel very real. That's how powerful mental time travel is, but they will actually never happen to us. And so we spend a lot of time on fast forward. We also spend a lot of time in rewind, right? We're ruminating, regretting over the past. We are thinking about those worries about what we did wrong the day before. And so we don't ever just sit on the play button, right? Like it's very rare for our minds to just be fully focused on that play button. And so what mindfulness is it stops the mental time travel. It is an exercise. I like to think of it as mental push-ups that will train your attention system, which is really what determines what you're focusing on, right? Whether it's your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, or whether it's what's going on right in front of you. And so it's a way to exercise and train your mind to stay on the play button more often. I think the research says that we spend about at least 50% of our days not thinking about what's going on in front of us. We spend 50% of it mind wandering and distracted. So it's like half of your waking moments. If you think about that at face value, you are not paying attention to what's going on in front of you. And then the research will tell us that when we mind wander, we don't think about pleasant things. We think about worries and stressors. And I'll share a quick story. There was a night I was giving my son when he was 3 years old. I was giving him a bath, and I thought I was doing everything right. Right, I'm working mom. I'm killing it. I'm here giving him his bath, and I worked all day, and everything is going great. When all of a sudden, in the middle of his bath, he literally stopped me, and he put his tiny little hands on my cheeks, looked up at me, and just said, "Mommy, why are you so sad?
Mm,
I love you so much, mommy." And like right then and there, it just shook me. And
yeah.
I realized here I thought I was being present with him, but I was physically present, but not mentally present. There's a big difference. And what mindfulness does for me now is that because I have the formalized practice, I still mind wander. I still get distracted. We all do because there's stress in all of our lives. The key is that I catch myself faster, right? I notice that it's happening so I can bring myself back to the present moment so that I'm not missing out on those important moments with my family or as a leader, how much we lose when we're not connected or present with the people that are within our organizations and on our team.
So much to pull back from that. Even just thinking about the risk of not being a mindful leader, the ripple effects that it has, not just within our teams, but our families, our community, the people around us, more importantly, our own health. As I think back onto even my experience when I was in the corporate world, I reached a point of burnout. I had a very fast track roller coaster of a career, and it's almost like we get rewarded for being a high performer, and it's a false sense of security of where we really are. You get the titles, you get more money, people are saying, woo, look at her, mother and doing all of this. But at the end of the day, we come crashing down. And I have a very similar experience too that I vividly remembered that challenged the idea of just how more mindful I wanted to be for my children. My son had came home from school, and we were super busy that day. And he goes, "Mommy, how was your day?" And he's super engaged in the moment, looking at me in the eyes. And I'm just going through my agenda. I had XYZ to do. And I go, we haven't even had lunch. And it almost felt like a badge. Like we were so busy, we didn't even eat lunch. And then it just felt so daunting after it came out that I thought, what am I teaching my child? I'm teaching him that he shouldn't nourish himself, that he should focus on the agenda, that there is no pausing. They're picking up on this. Our kids are one of our biggest wake-up calls in how we are living our lives and by what they are absorbing. And it completely changed the way I approach that. Have you found that to also see that your leadership and your mindfulness reach out into your children and
Oh,
the strategies you teach them?
definitely, definitely. As you were saying, like success can be our own worst enemy at times, and it's almost like an addiction, right? To like
Yes.
success and the busyness, and you feel like you're accomplishing something, which I did for many years feel that way, and I was teaching that to my children. And then when I really started looking at the science and the research behind performance, I actually now teach people how to slow down to speed up. And I know that that sounds like so counterintuitive, but it really is. And if we could teach our children nowadays how to understand that concept, how to emotionally regulate themselves, because this busyness and this constant overscheduling, really what it does is it introduces anxiety and stress, and it causes us to have a tendency to make emotional overreactions to things instead of that rational response. And I know that, I'm a work in progress. I'm working on it myself with my kids. But what I've noticed is that I am very deliberate in how I've tried to, be the example and teach my children that now if I'm in traffic, right, and I start to get anxious and I start to say things and yell at the cars in front of me, my son in the back seat will say, "Mom, take 2 deep breaths." Right?
Oh,
Like, it's going to
don't you love that?
Yes, I do. I think that, because it's an awareness, right? He's aware of what's going on instead of just being in the back oblivious. He is now like tuned in, to how we're all feeling and helping all of us as a family kind of relate. And, when I was a leader and I taught everybody mindfulness, one of the greatest compliments I ever got was when someone would tell me, hey, this is helping my performance at work. I really appreciate it, but it's changing the dynamic of my family.
Yes.
And that's the best, like the absolute best, critique that I could ever get, or feedback I could get from anyone, because that means, right, like their lives are literally changing, like the way they connect with each other. And one of the other stories I like to tell with my airmen is, we get so busy as leaders that, we might see somebody in the hallway and say, hey, how are you doing? But we don't really want them to answer. We just want to keep on walking, right? Like it's more of like the mandatory, like I have to say something.
Right.
And so I'm going to ask you how you're doing, but I'm not really asking how you're doing, right? Like I'm expecting you to say great, and then I can move on.
Keep it moving. Yeah.
And that right there, like, ruins the ability to develop trust. It ruins the ability to connect with the people you lead so that you can get more out of them, right? Like a more productive team is one that's highly connected, that has trust inside of it. And, people come into our office all the time, and we don't have the time to even turn away from our computer and actually look at them and talk to them. Or even if we do, how many times have we talked to someone and you can tell they're looking at you, but they're not really paying attention, right? Their mind is thinking about the email they need to send or who they need to call next. And so that's what I think is very detrimental to teams, to organizations, to that trust and connection that we build. And an example of one thing I used to do as a commander is I used to call parents or someone special. Like if one of our airmen, or actually anyone who worked for me, did something, maybe went above and beyond, they won an award, got a promotion, whatever it was, I would always offer to make that phone call. And what I noticed in those phone calls is that they were life-changing for many people, right? 50% of the time someone had like emotion tied to it, right? Like there were tears, because that's what happens when you get oxytocin, right? And you connect. And one call in particular, I called an airman's dad, and we were celebrating his promotion. And I got to kind of brag on his son, give him that glimpse of what his child's life was like in adulthood. And as we got to the end of the conversation, the dad just said, I'm so proud of you. I love you, son. And after we hung up, I looked up at my airman, and he had tears streaming down his face. And he said, my dad has never said that to me before. And it took like 2 to 3 minutes of my time to stop, to have a conversation with someone that was obviously, as the commander of the unit with 400 people, he was one of the youngest airmen that we had. But to stop, to connect, to have that conversation, it matters. And I think people don't realize that it's that lack of awareness, right? Like we all want to be that leader, but we feel like, oh, I don't have time, or I'm too busy. When mindfulness helps you slow down a little bit so you can see those moments and really capture them. And when you do, it's life-changing.
And then just to think, that's really right there, the definition of leadership in action, what you did, what you are doing, because it goes beyond the titles. It goes beyond this motivational thing, this inspirational thing, us using it in business. It's really about the ripple effect of the impact that we create in the lives of people all around us that we touch. It's how we are engaging and evolving our operating system in terms of the legacy that we leave behind through our actions. And that really does take a lifetime to always continue to evolve, especially as we get into new seasons of our lives, right? As we become parents, as we go beyond mid-career, as we enter new seasons that require a different perspective to fuel our growth and completely transform the way that we execute. But mindfulness is one of those things that will be a constant throughout that to help guide that new phase, right?
Yes.
And so as I think about, sometimes too, we tend to idolize those people who are just completely going full speed and aren't stopping, right? Aren't giving themselves the time to take a deep breath and to look at where they're at and to think intentionally about the actions that they're taking. How can we recognize the difference between a high performer who is mindful and a high performer who is not? That is,
I think, the biggest challenge for today. I will tell you from my experience, this is actually true story, sitting down at a table with my peers, One of them comes in Monday morning and is like, oh, I had to work all day Saturday to catch up. I've got a sick kid at home. I didn't get much sleep last night. All I have is my coffee here this morning, but I'm here to be awesome. And then the next day, or the next guy next to him says, oh, well, wait, I worked all day Saturday and Sunday to catch up. I've got 2 sick kids at home. Like, I didn't even sleep at all last night. I'm here to be awesome. And then it's like this competitive stress, right? Like we
Yep.
have to kind of like compete and say, well, I have more stress in my life than you do to make ourselves feel valued.
Yes.
And then, at the same table, I sat there and I said, well, I got all my work done last week because when I practice mindfulness, I create more white space, right? I don't mind wander half my day. So I have more time to get things done. And so I played with my kids all weekend. Nobody's sick. I've got a yummy green smoothie. I'm ready to start the day. And I'm not even kidding you. The sentiment at the table was, well, you're obviously not working hard enough, right? Like that is our culture today, right? Our culture is, well, if you're not working Saturdays and Sundays and stressed and, worried about everything, then you're doing something wrong. It's not the other way around. And I think we're at a transition point with this idea of the competitive stress nature of our culture. And I think we're hopefully turning toward that tipping point where people will start to see the value in the individuals that understand how to be mindful, how to pay more attention, how to be more effective, more productive, more aware. Because I think that is where we have to go in the future, right? The other way is just not sustainable. It really isn't. There's like a couple superhumans out there. I'm not going to say, because there are people out there that are CEOs of whatever Fortune 500 companies, and they'll say, oh, well, I only sleep 4 hours and I, work 18-hour days and blah, blah, blah. I will tell you, like, everyone will hit a brick wall at certain points. And the human body is the human body. We all need the same thing to be high performing, which is a solid and disciplined mind for making rational decisions. We also need to sleep, right? Anyone who tells you they can operate on 4 hours of sleep and they're awesome, they're actually bragging. They're suboptimal, in my opinion, because they're saying, I'm only getting 4 hours of sleep, so I'm not going to be performing at my best. Like that is the science behind it. So I am hoping we're going to be in this wave and this transition where the value will now be placed on working smarter, not necessarily just harder.
How can we be more innovative leaders? What does it take to reach that point, not only in our careers, but within our families, within our community, and the legacy that we're seeking to leave behind, to make it count, to make the challenges count?
I really think the key to being an innovator, especially in today's world of FOPO, right? Fear of other people's opinions and competitive stress. I think that it starts with authenticity and risk taking.
Mm.
And I say that because the starting point is you have to be very confident in who you are so that when you take the risks, you know what's on the other side. And you're comfortable with the fact that that could be failure, right?
Yep.
You are not completely have done the work and committed to figuring out who you are as an individual, what makes you you, what guides you, what is your foundation. When stress is introduced into the equation, you can feel very lost and you're not going to be in your high performing space. So that's why doing the deep work to figure out, who I am, what guides me. And in our work, we like to say that's the development of a personal philosophy, right? Do you know what your purpose is? Do you know what it is you value? Have you crafted a personal philosophy that basically is the identification and embodiment of who you are? And so a lot of people don't do that work, but that's where authenticity comes from. And then the second step is that risk taking, which I like to call embracing the sweet uncomfortable. Right? Keep yourself comfortable all the time. You're never going to stress yourself a little bit to get that growth and that learning. And so we need to find that sweet, uncomfortable space. And that comes with risk taking and exercising, right? Kind of strengthening our character by stepping out of our comfort zone on a regular basis. And so I think those are the 2 things many of us have to start with in order to kind of go down that path of innovation.
When you were going through the moment of feeling the overwhelm and the burnout that essentially introduced you to mindfulness, and we think about how we can be innovative leaders and how this fits into the who am I, did you have an identity crisis when you decided, you know what, I don't know if this is me, or I don't know if this is the best environment for me, then who am I if this has been me for so long? And how do I approach the unknown? I find that whenever we are evolving into a new season, it always comes with conflict and tension. And part of that is also in who we are and what that means. Did you experience that?
Definitely. Definitely. It was a big transition for me. I'm a big believer that change happens from pain and suffering for a lot of people. Um, and especially if we don't have the education and awareness, behind it. Uh, and so that was definitely for me. I was that type of personality that was going to keep going because success was following me everywhere I went. So I was like, this must be the right path I'm on, until it wasn't anymore, until that point of extreme pain. And I think that happens to a lot of people. I would like to think that we increase that awareness ahead of time to hopefully prevent that point for many, many folks. There's no doubt that the secrets to success and high performance relate to, hard work. And they also relate to having some talent or proper resourcing and training behind it. And a lot of people, those are the only two ingredients they need, and they will find themselves very successful. I like to say the missing ingredient for long-term sustainability for your performance is command of your mindset, right? And that's where that idea of, mindfulness comes in, doing the formalized training so that your mind is ready for whatever you're going to encounter.
As we wrap up the show, we love to have our guest experts leave our audience with a leadership challenge. Based off of our conversation today, what challenge would you leave our audience with?
So I would like to have them start to actually try to engage with a mindfulness practice. Now, we talked about that it doesn't necessarily have to be like sitting on the cushion and, meditating with your eyes closed out in nature. Really, the idea is where are you most present? And many of us have times in our lives where we are fully engaged in what we might even call getting close to a flow state, right? Where time either stands still or time goes by so quickly because you're so fully present in the activity you're participating in. And for many of us, maybe that's when we run, this happens, or when we're hiking or swimming or biking or hunting or fishing, whatever it is in your life. There's probably a moment of time where you are enjoying the activity that you're in because you're fully present. And for me, that's skiing or yoga does that for me. Just being with my family, many times I can find myself fully connected and present. So it's how do you then bring that into your work life? Right? Because most of us treat those moments like a luxury, not a necessity, right? Oh, I get that when I ski, but I only ski once a year. I get that when I fish, but I only fish, like every other month.
During vacation.
Yes, right. So my challenge to your listeners is to find those activities where you do feel fully present, because I think that's the start of your mindful journey, right? Having awareness of those moments and the presence you feel, and bringing them into your life more often, right? And finding other ways, maybe, you don't live near the mountains, so you can't ski all the time, but finding other ways where you can mimic or imitate that same feeling, right? Because it's about the feeling of being fully present and engaged. And so maybe start there. And maybe it's even just taking a walk and taking deeper breaths and focusing on the sensations of your breathing for like that full minute as you walk from point A to point B. And hopefully, like as you continue to kind of repetitively do it in your life, it will become more of that necessity, more of a, hey, this is something that I do every day to to take care of myself so that I can serve and lead others to the utmost of my capacity.
I love that challenge. And speaking on the power of mindfulness, and just to show everybody what it can do, you brought it to the military.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
And it's been a journey. And I'm not the only one. I've been doing the bulk of the work within the Air Force for sure. But I have some colleagues within the Army that have been slowly but surely trying to gain momentum and create a movement around it. And it really has started to take hold, because I think just as in our corporate culture today, people are finding I need a solution to the sustainability in my performance at doing my job and the joy and contentment I find in my life, the military is finding the same exact thing. And so it's taking some innovative leaders to start really opening up and talking about it. You'd be surprised. I used to get called like brave and bold for actually talking out loud about something like meditation and mindfulness. And I'm finding that more and more people are joining me on that journey. I used to have people come up and whisper it to me at the end of my speeches, like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm a meditator too." And I'm like, "That's great. Do you tell anyone?" And they're always like, "No, I never tell anyone." So it's definitely a journey that I think the military is on, but I think we want that disciplined warfighter, right? We want people who are in high stress situations that can make the right decision, the rational decision in heated moments, and then also come back from those really rugged environments and be okay, right? Have the resiliency and the mental strength to then re-engage with their communities and their families. So I think it's where we are going in the future. Mental skills training focused in mindfulness, I think you'll see a lot more of.
Oh, absolutely. And you are not only doing this within the military, but you are helping a lot of organizations do the same in their workforce, who is and will be continuing to deal with a lot of high stress environments and will be called to lead the organizational challenges. So as organizations are hearing this through the podcast, and if they're interested in getting in touch with you, what kind of work do you do with organizations and how can they work with you?
So I do everything from keynotes at conferences to kind of introduce the material. It's really requires a deep dive. So the keynote is kind of that introduction. And then I do workshops, anywhere from 4-hour workshops that I do myself with corporations, both with leadership teams and with the organization as a whole. And then I also have my partnership with Pete Carroll and Mike Gervais called Warrior's Edge. And that's actually an 8-hour intensive workshop, as well as digital training to scale to your organization. And we're working in places like Microsoft and Amazon, AT&T, some definite big companies, but it's scalable. So we can cater it to a smaller company just as much as we can to the larger organizations, because we think it's that important that all individuals start a formalized mental skills training program. And your organization, if you are one of especially at the front edge of this, right? Like not everybody's doing this. Just think how much more productivity, rational decision-making, performance that you can get, and ultimate joy and contentment, right? You can get for your organization as a whole.
Wow. It's something that I highly recommend to our purpose-driven organizations that are listening and want to partner up with their workforce. I encourage you to reach out to Jannell and get really into the background and the work of what's being done already within our organizations, but also at the forefronts with our military. And we'll be sure to include the information mentioned in our show notes, as well as the TED Talk that you've done and the Warrior's Edge course that you have. Guys, again, to our listeners, we are talking to a combat veteran, a pilot, a PhD, a wife, mother turned mindfulness practitioner to engage and evolve her high performance. We are so inspired by your story, truly, and the raw and authentic work that you're doing to leave the world a better place, not just through your own legacy, but that of your little ones who are watching what you do, and the rest of us. We appreciate you. To our listeners, the ball is in your court. I challenge you to take action, continue the conversations to evolve your leadership, and reach out to Dr. MacAulay to partner with her in your leadership journey. You are listening to Flipping the Script, Leadership Behind the Scenes. Until our next episode, thank you so much, Jannell.
Thank you.
If you found even the smallest nugget of wisdom in this episode, share it with a friend and your friend will thank you. Let's continue the conversation with like-minded leaders and join us on Facebook at Go Flip the Script. Until next time, I challenge you to incorporate what you learned today to evolve your leadership impact.